Aloha everybody and welcome to the Wild Wahine. This is Kaylani and this is your astro forecast for this week, October 25th through the 31st, which is Halloween. I'm so excited. So anyway, we have a lot of different transits that are happening obviously this week, but I like to choose 3 or 4 of them that I think are going to be most influential in your life and down a little bit so that you can use that energy to make fantastic choices in your life. So let's dig into what's going on because Venus is taking the forefront this week, which is why I'm cheesing like this, so you guys know, as a Libra rising. I love it when Venus is prominent and making these prominent transits, especially when she's transiting other benefic planets like Jupiter and making this beautiful sextile, or she's squaring Neptune, which is also kind of some interesting energy, especially to have like before Halloween. So we have like a really positive week for the most part this week, and I'm excited to share that with you. So let's just jump right in. So we are starting with Venus in Sagittarius, and it's squaring Neptune in Pisces. We're going to be feeling that from now all the way until about October 30th. It perfects on the 26th, which is where we'll kind of feel that concentration of energy. So with Venus, we're talking about things that are beautiful, things that are connective, things that are fair, things that make us feel good, that taste good, that are good, connections with other people, love, all of that. And then we're talking about Neptune, which is this spiritual place, this place of transcendence, this place where we can connect to something that's larger than us, but it's also a place where we can be deluded and a place where we can be very confused at times as well. There is some reception that Venus has with this particular transit because Neptune is in Pisces. Now Venus is in her exaltation when she's in Pisces, so there, you know, is a little bit of reception here where this is going to be like an even more beneficial transit for those of us where if this is hitting us in some of our like angular houses especially, but even if it's not, it's still good vibes. Positive things that come from this particular transit. So it's a really good transit for dreamers, for lovers, for creatives, for gathering, for connecting with people. Now, I don't know about you, but I have been having crazy dreams. I'm a lucid dreamer anyway, but a lot more lucid dreams, like almost every single night. I've been hearing that from other people. I have been hearing that from my clients. Now, some of it can do because we're a little bit closer to Halloween and the veil is thinning for those of us who believe that. I do. And so I do feel that there's a lot more spiritual activity and a lot of dream state and that veil that separates, you know, like our reality and the things beyond, which is kind of Neptunian, everything that lies beyond the boundless place. And then we also have this transit that is supporting that. So like if you are thinking about like envisioning things for yourself, or if you're having like a deep dream state, or just finding like a lot of joy in some type of escapism of some sorts, then you're really in alignment with this particular transit. I feel like it's also really interesting to happen around Halloween because instead of having like a spooky, gory Halloween, it might have a little bit more of a romantic vibe to it, like a more kind of fantastical, scary type of way. I feel like people are gonna have more costumes that's more that kind of like, you know, sexy librarian or like sexy engineer. We've all seen those like regular jobs, like, you know, sexy cook or whatever. You know, they have that. Or even something a little bit more fantastical, or even something that somebody just like created out of the blue. They were like, I dreamt about this and this should be my costume. I think that's interesting. A lot more like rom-com-y kind of like Halloween-y type stuff. I saw this really weird, it was kind of good, interesting kind of rom-com horror slash. It was called Spontaneous. It was on Netflix, and I don't want to like give any spoilers. I hate giving spoilers to movies, but I thought it was good, and it was just like it just is very much this transit, this kind of love story, and this kind of like weird thing because like all of these high school students spontaneously combust, and nobody knows why, and it's kind of like a coming of age story. So check that out if you're into that kind of thing, or watch it with your teen or young person. And then there's this other movie that I really want to see, but I haven't seen yet. That is so this transit. It's this Spanish film called Witchin' and Bitchin'. It's supposed to be this like over the top ridiculous like witch film that's kind of scary but not really, but the visuals are really kind of stunning and otherworldly, and I feel like, oh my god, that's so part. So I'm gonna watch it during this transit. I'll get back with you guys and let you know if it's any good. But anyway, it just like those 2 movies like came to me out of nowhere, and I was like, why am I like, these aren't even the type of horror films that I usually watch because I'm very much into like dark Plutonian type body horror and other type of things like that, and psychological, you know, stuff, but you know, the transit's here, and so suddenly like this was like, these were recommended to me, and I was like, oh, that's so interesting. But anyway, aside from all the Halloween stuff, as you can see, I'm really excited about. It is a deeply spiritual time too, because it is Neptune. So a really good time for you to kind of sort of root into what you want, you know, in the spiritual sense, if you're kind of investigating your spirituality, if you want to kind of play around with that a little bit during Halloween times, a really good transit for that, a really good transit to fall in love, to find your soulmate, to tell somebody that you want to be with them, to really just put yourself out there with people that you care about. It doesn't have to be always in the romantic sense. It could be even merging your business with another person's business and envisioning what you want to do. Like if you're in some sort of like group, I'm in a women's group that's really fantastic, and we, you know, sort of set goals for ourselves. This is a great time to kind of imagine what we want to do and like potentially like bounce it off of someone else and see, you know, what they think about it. We're making these kind of long-term visions of what we want and what we desire. A great time for writers, of course, and for anybody that's creating anything, especially if it has to do with the arts, if it has to do with acting, if it has to do with music. If you created a piece of music and you want to give it to somebody to show them that you care about them, or you just want their feedback on it, really wonderful time to share our art. Just a really good, wonderful time to sit down and kind of sort of do that work. You know, if you've been feeling a little bit uninspired, especially from that heavy Mars energy that we were just kind of sort of trying to negotiate around, like now is the time where you can kind of root in and really just say, okay, I'm just going to take this time to, like, you know, binge watch a really fun, fantastical show. I'm going to take this time to like listen to my favorite podcast about spirituality, or whatever it is that connects you to spirit, whatever that is. Or just like, you know, go somewhere beautiful, and we'll talk about that, especially with Venus sextiling Jupiter. But all of those things, spending time by the beach, if you're lucky enough to be in a place that's sunny and the beach is warm, but even if not, like even if you're in a cold place, just going out and looking at the beach, making a foot bath for yourself, which is lovely, bathing, showering, making yourself hot tea, having some sort of you know, facial or whatever, like something that's beautifying for yourself, that feels good, that just makes you feel like a princess or a prince, you know? So it's not really like this time that you're like creating this big thing or you're like overcoming. I mean, we kind of sort of did that like last week. This is like a little bit of a quiet before the storm. So enjoy the time, like really enjoy it. Like, I'm giving you homework to enjoy yourself this week. And some of the challenges that can come with that, of course, is delusion within our relationships. Not necessarily being honest about with ourselves about how things really are. Being codependent, you know, we can find that a lot of times when it comes to like Venusian, Neptunian things, not really thinking about it, having this kind of self-sacrificial narrative about yourself. We see that a lot with Piscean things, like I'm going to put myself out there and, you know, and it's kind of not dangerous and not safe, but you still do. That's kind of like not that great. Having unrealistic expectations in romance, unrealistic expectations in financial matters, or even in matters that have to do with partnerships in any other way, getting caught up into spirituality that's really toxic for you. There's a word that I learned called conspirituality, when you're kind of combining the conspiracy theory and the spirituality together and getting caught up in some weird stuff. That's also can happen too at this time, and just the general sense of overdoing things. Just because Neptune has this boundless energy, there is nothing that's holding you in. The possibility of going anywhere and doing anything is great. You know, you can spread yourself all the way out. And for some people, that's like, oh, I feel so like endless. And for some people, they're like, oh my God, I feel so trapped. You know, it makes me think of a lot of people that come to Hawaii, they're like, oh, I'm so landlocked. Like, I can't believe this, like the ocean, because they look at the ocean as a barrier, and they're like, I have rock fever. It's actually a thing where people are just freaked out to be on an ocean, and they're like, I gotta get off the island. You know, I feel so locked in. Whereas myself, and obviously so many other people, are like, I feel so expansive. I feel like, oh my gosh, it's just the ocean for miles and miles and miles, and I could just, it's just never ending, you know, so to speak. And so there's this expansive feeling, while other people feel incredibly trapped. And so it's just, you know, those two things. Next up, we have a Venus in Sagittarius sextiling Jupiter in Aquarius. We're going to be feeling that from now until October 31st, and that's perfecting on the 28th. So again, Jupiter here is having some reception because Venus is in Jupiter's sign of Sagittarius. So again, these are really good feelings, making this sextile. Now, sextiles are of the nature of Venus. So when we have this particular sextile, usually a lot of positive things come out of it. So where we were in a place with Neptune where it was all kind of imaginative and in our minds, and we're kind of like playing in these escapist spaces, maybe spaces that are not real, in the dream space and all of that, and the whole dreaminess of like that whole Halloween thing. With Jupiter, we're kind of talking about tangible things. We're talking about receiving gifts. We're talking about giving a gift. We're talking about like where you've been working at something really hard and you really haven't seen a break. Jupiter's coming in with this particular transit. With Venus, these are our two benefic planets, and it's like, boom, there's your gift. There's that thing that you've been working hard, you've been desiring, like here it is. Like just say yes and take it and then do what you have to do. So it's a big yes, you know, as opposed to the big F no, which Saturn sometimes can give. And sometimes that's not a bad thing, but it's always nice to hear a yes, especially when it's something that you want to do. So great time for gatherings, for getting people together, especially now that Jupiter is direct. You know, this is like, you know, a lot of people are kind of like coming out a little bit more, gathering a little bit more, depending upon where you are in the world, and obviously how your state or country is dealing with the Rona. For a lot of people, at least for here on my island, you know, this like Halloween is going to be our first time where people are gathering and getting together and doing things. So it looks like it's going to be like, you know, fairly nice time, good friendship, good celebrations, great time to get married, really great time to go on vacation. Especially to like a warmer place, you know, if you're traveling, a good time to start a course or even to teach something or to take something, to be a student, to maybe take something about spirituality, because again, we have Venus in Sagittarius, and there is this sense of like connection through like the higher mind, the higher self, and learning and all of that. So it's really good for that. There's a certain amount of like decadence or like shopping or things. Like I was listening to, I forgot who it was, a philosopher, I forgot their name now. I was listening to them talk about how like Venus signifies shopping, you know? And I was like, yeah, that makes so much sense. It's like, I want these beautiful things. I want to have them. I want to wear them. I want them in my space. They make my space beautiful. They make things easier for me. Like, cause I was thinking, well, if Venus signifies shopping, would that be like just everyday shopping? Isn't that more mercurial? Yes, in a way. But like, even if you like get a new vacuum cleaner, no one's like, ooh, vacuum. Well, some people might be, cause there's some nice vacuum cleaners. I'm kind of like that, but you know, whatever. You know, like it's like, oh, this new vacuum, but I mean, of course it's like a nice vacuum cleaner, but you're just like, you get to clean your space. And Venusian things are clean. They tend to smell good. They look good. They make everything organized. It feels good. It feels beautiful. That is important. Even some of the more mundane things can be very Venusian when you're talking about like purchasing things. So there's all of that. Now, the caveat with that, which is the challenge, is the overindulgence, because it's Jupiter, right? So it's too much of any good thing is too much, and it can turn bad. Also too with Venus, sometimes it's just too much. It's too many things coming in. Venus and Sagittarius, too much love, too much food, too much sex, too much drugs, too much alcohol, too much of all of the things that people like to use to escape or to play or to do because they're fun, and all of the different things, which if that's what you're choosing to do, fantastic. But when it's overkill, when you have no control, when it is taken over and you no longer are able to kind of sort of like do the things that you normally do, your basic upkeep of your life, that's when you know it's kind of like all went over the edge. And that's what you have to worry about, especially with Neptune involved. Neptune transits a lot of times has to do with abuse of, you know, chemicals, you know, a lot of times, and whether that be drugs, alcohol, or whatever it is that you might be obsessed with. So going over the top with that, especially when you're coming from a locked in place, that tends to happen, and the loss of control, you know, the complete utter loss of control. So next up, we have Mars entering the sign of Scorpio. That's happening on October 31st, and that's happening until December 13th. So Mars is picking up dignity now in the sign of Scorpio, because that's Mars's home. It has been for the last month in Libra, where it was in detriment. It was not, you know, able to do Mars things. I talked about that in many other videos. It wants to get out. It wants to do things. It just wants to like activate and be in a space and just do it. Like the Nike slogan, like that's such a Martian, you know, slogan. And it just wasn't able to do that because there was a lot of compromise and there was a lot of permission. And this is like Mars as a teenager, like, I don't want to ask mom and dad. I'm going to take the car. I'm going out. I'm just going to, you know what I mean? I'm having the house party, like all those 80s movies where the parents would leave, you know, Saturn would go away. And then like, you know, there's these huge house parties. You wreck the house and everything like that is just because it's fun, because I just want to do it. So it's a little bit different though in the sign of Scorpio, because it's a little bit more internalized. Scorpio is a fixed sign. Scorpio is a water sign. It's a feminine sign, or a yin or negative sign. So this is a little bit more internalized. This is a little bit more focused. This is more transformative, but it's like taking the reins of your transformation. You're like not waiting for like Uranus to like kind of drop the lightning bolt, and you're just like, wow, it's not a tower moment, like I'm holding on for dear life and then it explodes and I have to deal. This is like, I'm controlling the ship and I'm going to say like what happens, and transformation's happening. It's happening right now. Like, I'm ready. Let's do it. It's really kind of walking into it in a very fearless way. So it's very empowering when you need to transform something, and you probably need to, because really for the last couple of weeks, you've been in this Libra space where you're just like, well, maybe I should and maybe I shouldn't, and I'm not sure. What do you think? And what does he think? And all of those types of things. And that can sometimes feel very disempowering, or also just the energy levels have been just, for some people. So you're picking up energy, you're decisive, you're making choices. Doesn't necessarily always mean the choices are really good choices, but they're empowered choices and they're choices that you're passionate about. So that's kind of good. Strong-willed, self-reliant, highly focused, able to hold your focus. Fixed energy means you can stick the landing. It means that you're coming out of the gate with power. It doesn't necessarily always mean it's lasting as long, but it is strong, and especially in the sign of Scorpio, it's very strong. There's a certain level of investigation into things that are hidden. So you could be doing a lot of self-reflecting, like, where do things need to be transformed for you? Like I said, it's powerful transformation. It's transformation that comes from within. It's transformation that you're welcoming. You're like, come at me, bro, type, stuff, so it's activating off of a certain level of intuition. So in a lot of ways, it might be a very much more focused Mars than when Mars is in Aries, which is, it's a little bit more chaotic and spread all over the place. This is a little bit more tuned in and focused, because there's a narrowing that Scorpio has with it being, fixed. It's able to kind of sort of say, let's focus the beam here. It's like a laser beam. This is more like, I'm just honing in on and focusing my energy to this in a very surgical way. So it's cutting through the bullshit, facing your fears, as I mentioned before, confront what's not working, really confronting it and nixing it, and working through your fears, because Scorpio is a place where we do work through our fears, and not in a Saturnian way, which is like, oh my gosh, this is hard, I'm so afraid, it's depressing me, I don't know what I'm gonna do. Mars is like, I'm afraid, but I mean, the monster is coming, like Freddy, Jason, they're coming. So what are we going to do? Like, let's defend ourselves, let's go, I'm going to hit him first before he hits me. That's that Mars energy. So it should feel good, because you're going to feel like, you can do this. And I like that. Some of the challenges, as they always are with this, is being drawn to danger, drawn to mystery. It can be very intense. Too intense sometimes. The passion level can be off the roof so much that it just is too much for people. They get scared and want to move away. So modulating that would be good. There's an obsession that happens when you laser focus something, when you're really that specific. Like, I feel like surgeons is a Martian job. Like, there's a lot of like surgeons, people like weapons masters, people that are like making swords, and and people who work with weaponry in whatever way they do, like guns and things. There's a certain amount of like precision and kind of focused practice with that. And so I mean, of course you're going to have the other swing of the end is going to be an obsessive nature, because you're so heavily focused and fixed on something. So anybody that has like fixed placements know what it's like to be obsessed with things, because that is the nature of being fixed, like the darker nature, so to speak. With that being said, though, I expect things to come out, things that have to do potentially with like surgery or surgical things, things that have to do with weaponry, and also, like I mentioned before, with Mars, the police, army, the military, all of those folks, people that deal with weapons in whatever way, investigative journalism, maybe things being revealed that we hadn't, seen before, we didn't know because someone's doing a story on it. There's also psychoanalysts, and also scientists, also like, discovering things and finding things out, especially if you've been working on something for a really long time. So I'm wondering like how that's going to play out with this particular transit. So next up, and this is our last transit, is Mercury and Libra trining Jupiter in Aquarius. That is happening on Halloween. That's when it's perfecting, but we're feeling that October 27th through November 3rd. So this is the third time we're actually hitting this transit. That's why this is important. That's why I pulled it up. The first time, and you can look back in your journals, I always tell you when we're going to hit things, especially during the retrograde, because it's touching back to that, because it is Mercury. So September 20th was the first time we hit this. That's when Mercury was direct, Jupiter was retrograde at that time. October 3rd was the second time we hit it. Mercury was retrograde, and Jupiter was also retrograde at that time. And now we're hitting it and both planets, Mercury and Jupiter, are direct. So it's almost like we get a third opportunity to deal and work with these Mercurial, Jupiterian things in our life. So what does that mean? So Mercury is ruling, especially Mercury and Libra, trying to make a deal about how we're communicating, what we're doing, what we're saying, the everyday things in our life, with our social life contracts or social contracts that we have with people. It can be with family members, it can be with our jobs, our business partners, our loved ones, anybody. And then Jupiter in Aquarius, which is kind of this idea of what it is to be an expansive idea, the highest ideal, our morality, how we're doing things, and what's good for the collective. So I see this really very much as this could play out in a political way of just the back and forth that's happening about things that are really important to us in politics. It can be the reconciliation bill, I believe, that's happening, or so many of other bills, and deciding on, what we're going to do and how we're going to move forward, especially after Rona, and how it's affected us, and the constant back and forth that's happening. I think we're going to see some decisions being made. Do I think that everybody's going to be happy with it? No, not at all. But it's going to be something that's workable for the masses, and I guess any good negotiation is good when the two parties are not really that happy, right? Because I guess if one person's a lot happier than the other, then that means it maybe wasn't as great of a negotiation. Either both are happy or no one's happy, I think, are the best negotiations. But when one is happy and the other one isn't, then that's a bad negotiation. And that can be like just happening in your life, especially with Mercury. It could be launching a course, launching a new thing that you want to add to your business, like getting that information out there. If you tried a launch before and then that launch didn't work, or you had to tweak it, and then you tried it again, you're like, okay, I need to tweak this again. So here's like another opportunity that you have to kind of tweak your content, tweak your stuff. But just know that this is the third time that this is coming around, and so it's another opportunity to kind of sort of like get on board with ideas and things that are going to be great to the masses. And I just think as a business transit, I always like to pull out for those of my business folks that watch this astro forecast. I think this is a really good one to launch or get something out there, especially with all the Venusian energy. People will be naturally kind of drawn to it. And you can get this kind of well and good and clear before Mercury squaring Pluto, which is going to be new information that comes out that might be a little bit tricky. So anyway, that's what I have for you for this week. Thank you so much for staying and hanging out here and listening to the astro forecast for this week. You can always find me on YouTube. Make sure you, if you like this video, you like it and you subscribe to the content. You can find me on Instagram at _wild_wahine, and I'm on Facebook and Twitter, TikTok, and all of that stuff. I'm on Clubhouse, where we do live chats about different things. We talk about astrology, we talk about herbalism, and so I have classes and just discussions really on Clubhouse every Wednesday and then every other Thursday. So there's more information in the bottom if you want to just just come out and listen to me live, and ask questions and all that good stuff. So I try to make myself available for that. And then we do have our last week of the Halloween sale that's happening. It's 15% off. Make sure you join it. It has been really fantastic for a lot of people. So the code is Halloween15 in all capital letters. So make sure you check that out. And that's also going to be listed below. Have a wonderful week, and I will see you in the next video. Aloha.